you could almost argue that for years, the high street dictated to the customer. That's where you had to go, whether they liked it or liked it not. Your mum and dad went into town on a Saturday because that's when they were free, and that's how they had to do the shopping. Yeah. And mum got the housekeeping, went round with the kids, right, Molly needs a pair of shoes, Jim needs a coat, right, Dad, you go to the supermarket and do that. And that was their Saturday. Whereas that's changed now because we're all time poor. So retail has to adapt to that. I don't necessarily buy in completely into the experiential market. I think it has to be clean. I think it has to be efficient. I think you have to get served properly. But that doesn't mean to say that while I'm here, I have to watch herds of wildebeest riding across the plain, or somebody has to mop my brow or give me a cappuccino. It's actual fact. I'm just here to be quiet quickly, and I want to look at that Rolex. When can I have one? I'd like to try it on, just see what it looks like, see if that face is the right size for me, and everything else. So, and that's the reason why the retail now tends to be fashion-led is because of that same sort of thing. Actually, that's the lowest common denominator, which is the hardest to see from the picture.
Welcome to the podcast, Jim Harris. So I might just get you to relay some of the stuff you've just talked to us about. But obviously, many people will know you for St. Stephen's in Hull. But can you just give us a little bit of a checkered history of your past? What brought you to Hull and what you've been up to for the last 10, 15 years?
I'm kind of a localish lad. Yeah. In as far as I went to school in Brigg in the 70s when it was still a grammar school. And then from there, I kind of headed off on my travels employment-wise in pure retail, which took me to Scotland, London, Cambridge, Southampton, everything else. And then kind of, I suppose, and I think we'll touch on this later, pure retail was kind of having its day to me in the kind of mid-90s. So then I kind of moved to the other side of the track. So I moved into the property management side, working for various landlords, working for various management companies. Early noughties, I said it was time to do my own thing. So I worked for myself. I was director of a security company. I was director of a cleaning company, which with a limited success, it probably struck me that actually I was better working for somebody else than working for myself.
So quite entrepreneurial to go off and start those sort of businesses.
Yeah, well, I think it was. I think you go through that phase in your life, dare I say, when you think that actually you could do it slightly better than somebody else could, or at least you could put your own spin on it. Yeah. So I got the chance. I got the chance to couple of actually 2 or 3 friends through rugby. Right. They were ex-coppers who just started a security business, and they were a bit tired of sat in the Sierra on a building site with Rover all night, and decided there was something different. So we had this idea for, I suppose, taking security blue collar. Right. And actually doing it properly in blue chip businesses, and part of that was shopping centres, and going and saying, right, rather than you have to own your own people, we can come and do it for you. Yeah. We'll bring our expertise, we'll bring our knowledge of the law, we'll recruit the people, we'll suit them, we'll boot them, and more importantly, we'll manage those rotas. Rather than say, well, most of us can get by with respect if that cleaner doesn't appear and your bin doesn't get emptied, but if your security card doesn't arrive at night so somebody can't go home, then that's tough. Yeah, okay, get that. So that worked kind of fairly well, and then I moved that into cleaning and bits and pieces, and then, as happens, big business Compass came in, offered a big lump of cash for the business, and I say my 15% wasn't really enough to go to my island on and retire. So, and again, as these things happened, this was 2009, the phone rang from one of my old bosses and said, look, there's a job we think we could do for you, you could do for us. And I say literally, he kind of took a breath and said, but it's in Hull. And I said, well, actually, don't worry, because it's a kind of world I know quite well. My parents were getting on, and it was, for me, it was that kind of perfect fit. So I came back up here, summer 2009, and here we are today.
So that was just before I arrived in Hull. So what state was St Stephen's in at that point? Was it built? Was it pre-development?
Yeah, no, it opened in 2007. So those kind of listeners who, if you think of that part of Hull city centre, it was perhaps at the time maybe a little as Hull sometimes are, a little bit late for the party and that kind of thing, because most cities, towns, late 90s were taking those, whatever you want to call it, those old-fashioned bits of their city. So again, you think of Hull in that part of the world, you think of the old bus station, bun in the oven, the church down there. There was the on the corner was the old, well, how far back do you want to go? The ABC Cinema, the same place that Buddy Holly came to in 1960. The Beatles played and all the rest of it. Yeah, a couple of times. So they partnered with what was a Dutch bank at the time to bring this together. And the whole bit, if again you think back, so the key thing was there was the new interchange, what is now Paragon Station and the bus station. New shopping bit in the middle with 1,600 car parking spaces, but it also included the Albemarle Music Centre and the truck.
Okay.
So the whole thing altogether was about 140 million in 2007. So, and you can argue whether it was good or bad, but that's what we did. So the early management was changing. The landlord didn't necessarily like what they were doing. So I arrived summer of 2009 with a remit to change some bits and pieces. We still didn't have the bit that's now super dry. That was empty. Car park wasn't really working, etc., etc.
Yeah.
Life was changing. So I think 15 years on, we're certainly in a better place. And for our part of the city centre, actually, we're probably roughly where we want to be. COVID changed lots of things, as we know. Value-wise, we're nowhere near. If you actually took that lump of real estate and said to anybody like, fancy buying this lump of real estate, they certainly wouldn't get 170 million for it. Right. But that's the world over. Urban spaces are very difficult spaces.
Yeah,
and I know it's something we're gonna touch on.
That. Yeah, we'll come on to the kind of future of the high street, because I'm interested in your opinion on it. But I remember I saw you speak many years ago, and I think you talked about at the time you wanted to go and find a kind of marquee brand to kind of bring into St Stephen's, and Superdry, I think at the time was probably that. So what was that journey like for you to try and go and attract some of those brands to the
I think it was I think you are the first thing to imagine is as much as we are brand St Stephen's, we are very much tied to brand Hull, and you could argue that probably then comes into brand East Yorkshire, whatever. And that whether we like it or like it not, and this is not being self-deprecating, because I'm not that kind of person, but for lots of people, we're the end of the line. All right, we've got the cream phone boxes, but I think people think we smell of fish and talk like John Prescott.
Absolutely.
That's some of the City of Culture changed a bit of that. So I think it's actually, I spend lots of my time promoting the city, what we do, how we do it, and I think actually if you look at where we are now at the present, for us, we are the cultural centre of the region. We're certainly the administrative centre of the region. We've got the medical, we've got the sporting, and maybe take out the airport bit, but we have got those links. So if you look at our part of the world, certainly if you look at and I think it's important that we do make these comparisons. If you look at the Grimsbys and the Scunthorpes, which is definitely in our remit. If you go up the coast with respect to the Bridlingtons and the Scarboroughs, I think you have to stop at probably Pocklington, because York would then take over. But actually, we do dominate that region. And I think that's the important thing to imagine. We are not a Leeds and a Manchester. People might travel it's great now to have the Connexin Arena. I went to the comedian gig a couple of weeks ago, and that was 3,700 people who come from far and wide to see that guy. But for the main, our key catchment is probably 20 minutes drive time.
Yeah.
And I think that these are the things that you have to. You also have to look at the Acorn profile, our demographics, and as much as there are lots and lots of richer chimneys out towards Beverley, a lot of those people do not shop in Hull. They might come for the odd restaurant, they may come and change their specs, they might come for a medical appointment, or if they can get one, to buy a Rolex. But most of the time, Beverley people shop in Beverley or perhaps in Leeds. So it's identifying that customer and being able to realistically to work with them.
So how easy is it to attract brands to come and invest in Hull?
I think for us, what you've got now, perhaps just to wind that back slightly, and if you have a look at the makeup of our city centre, and I think we talk about the high street, but I would suggest that's actually 70s, 80s thinking. Those high streets, which they came about because retail was king. If you look at the way our European partners do things, if you go to France or Holland or Belgium, they made a point of keeping their urban centres actually quite independent. So the Decathlons, the Macros all sit outside the centre.
Yeah.
I'm afraid we caved into the power of the pound per square foot. And so you think back to those kind of days when White Frigate had M&S on it, it had Burton's on it, and everything else. When Princess Key had the Disney store in there, TK Maxx, those days, ladies and gentlemen, have gone. And I think you have to think more about multi-use cities. Leisure and hospitality is king. And so for us, if you like, within the city, the last holdout for pure retail is probably our end of town. So actually we do, and to have a travel centre in effectively the centre of the city, which is now quite rare, gives us a boost. We've got good cinemas, we've got good theatres. Connections brings that 4,000 seat arena, Chuck in City Hall, 1,200 people, great thing for tribute bands, for one-offs. New theatre was refurbished during City of Culture. So actually, when you break down the offer, it's actually, for those different sectors, it's actually quite solid. And with what's to come, I went to the preview of the new Maritime Museum last week.
Right.
So we've got, depending where you put the decimal point, the council will say we've got £65 million of heritage money coming in, which is great. So supports the maritime culture. Queen's Gardens is partway through being refurbished. Arctic Corsair, the lightship. We've seen the new bridge going in. A63 will be finished, etc., etc. So again, to look forward and to see what's coming. And I know sometimes as a city centre occupier, I've got to catch my breath and think, well, actually, when the cranes do go away and we don't have weekend road closures, the future is actually looking quite positive. Chuck into sport, we've got we've got Rovers and FC and the Tigers, who all play within our city. We're not getting
rare nowadays.
It is absolutely right. Yeah, so I think the present and looking to the future, actually, there's room to be positive, but that's not actually talking about retail.
Yeah,
it's the different bits and pieces now which make up that city offer. Tourism heritage is massively important because you've got an ageing populace who will travel, but they need to have something to get their teeth into. And we're not a Skipton, we're not a Ripon, we're not a Stratford-on-Avon, but it's actually pulling out that heritage that is genuine. You can actually go around that trawler. You can see the new Maritime Museum is going to be ace. Our architecture's quite positive. So I think you have to be quite careful that you don't polish the proverbial, and you actually have something solid in there to work on. And I think the city will have that. How we market it and how we get that out to the world in general, because we're the end of the motorway line, we're the end of the rail line. But we've got great stuff, like we've now got good hotels. The Doubletree's doing a great job. Holiday Inn will be refurbished. The marina's looking solid. Lots of great stuff around there. Yeah. Humber Street and everything else. So
I've got the answer. You're the answer. The passion and the verve that you've got for the region and what you do just is abundant. But if I just take you back to, you were saying that the main part of your role, or a fair proportion of your role, is going out promoting. Where are you going to do that?
Well, what I do is, firstly, within our business, we own, as a British Land as a business, is now, I think we've just bought, literally in the last 3 weeks, we bought 7 new retail parks. So it's talking within our business to those tenants. It's talking particularly in our case to key fashion brands. So if we're doing as we're doing at the moment, a portfolio deal with, say, it's not a problem to mention the name, with somebody like Mango, then we have to say, right, actually, you should be in Hull as well, and these are the reasons why you should be here. So that's part of it. The other side of it, wearing probably my whole bid hat or my chamber hat, is actually looking to general, because we need the business development, but we also need that professional recruitment. If I speak to lawyer friends or accountant friends, attracting good people to the area is quite tough. We have a great university, but they don't have a medical school. So how are we going to bring doctors into this area? So it's just making the area not telling fibs, ladies and gentlemen, but actually saying, actually there are great things. I'm just outside Beverley. I can get to the seaside at Hornsey in literally 25 minutes. Now, it might be the Humber and the North Sea, but I can paddle down that sand, on the beach. Fyle is 15 minutes further. Scarborough's 15 minutes further. I can get out into the Wolds. Yeah. Etc. Hull trains will get me into London in 2.5 hours.
It's such a secret. It's a best kept secret.
I think that
Hull.
as well.
I love East Yorkshire. It's a beautiful part of the world. Next weekend, I've got friends from London, went to university with, that are coming up to stay with me. I think
he's taken them to Leeds, by the way.
Well, yes. Well, that's part of
I'm genuinely looking forward to them coming up, because I'm going to take them out. We're going to go for a walk in the Wolds. We're going to go stop in country pubs, drink good beer, have good food, and just they're going to see stuff that they would never see in London. And I'm looking forward to bringing them to Hull. Just jumping in to talk about one of the processes that we often get asked to automate, which is the processing of supplier invoices, also known as accounts payable automation. So what does that mean? Well, most businesses receive invoices from their suppliers, and a lot of businesses still have people that are manually reviewing those invoices, making sure that they're correct, making sure they're accurate, and then manually rekeying them into a finance system or an ERP system. Well, our solution can automate that process. So typically an invoice will come in, we'll use capture technology to understand what's on that invoice. We'll then match that data up against goods received note to make sure that we've received the product. We'll match it up against purchase order data to make sure that somebody has placed an order for that product. And ultimately, if we can match that up, we can automatically push that into an ERP system or finance system, and nobody has to touch it. How good does that sound? If there are exceptions, if there are things that need to be checked, that's fine. We can use digital workflow to push that to somebody to eyeball it and say, is this correct, or does something need to change? Ultimately, though, that can then be pushed again into an ERP system or a finance system. This is about making your life easier. It's about making operations as quick and as efficient as possible. And we do that all the time. If that sounds interesting, then get in touch. That's enough from me. Back to the podcast.
I would also recommend, if you've got time, to go around the Old Town.
Yeah.
Because that pub offer now is maturing. There's some great new brands down there. And if you've got, dare I say, younger members of that group, then you look at Iron Lilies.
You consider me
young? You look at Brewdog. Yes, well,
no.
Yes, of course. Yeah. So I think I'm not saying there's something for everything, because that would be wrong. But I think that the way the offer is growing and maturing, I think is interesting. And certainly if you look at other larger northern towns and cities, I think lots of them would kill for what we've got here.
Yeah. So interesting. So back in the day, I used to work in print, in publishing, and some of my customers used to be some of the biggest, coffee table sort of publishers going, really. And it was always, and I doubt it's changed, Yorkshire and Humber was, if presses are going down and things, and deadlines aren't being met, Yorkshire Humber, they're the last ones that they'll be the biggest affected. So I suppose if I try and link that to what my question is, how tough is it to talk to brands to come to Hull, to come to St. Stephen's? Because is there that stigma still attached to the city, or is it, is that now sort of changing now that, so you say, look, we've got some great spaces here, all the things you've just said, which are absolutely bang on.
Yeah.
How tough is it?
I think it is. I think it is changing. Just think about. Our friend. Chris Martin's decided Coldplay is going to come to the city.
Yeah.
So I think it's more. I think it's more about proving that economic test that actually, we are 230,000 people. The spending power is here. The access is here to the wider area, and I think it is promoting that regional economy. And I think which leads me on to the next part, I think, of the good news is the devolution deal, which, although we are only going to be, and we were lucky to get it through, because obviously we're only going to be a two authority devolution deal, which will affect, ladies and gentlemen, the money going forward. But I think to get that done was amazing.
Yeah,
and
agreed.
That not only, I think, will it bring in extra cash, but it will streamline the decision making, which is what in the past has it's
hampered things.
It's not my job to sort of to cut through politics, but that's, you've had one bit that was always fairly true blue, and you had another bit that wasn't. Never the twain shall meet. In fact, it was almost a badge of honour that, I'm a working class lad from, the old joke about, oh dear, your mother's dead, Johnny. She's gone to a better place. Oh, has she moved to Beverley? And and that kind of thing. Whereby I think it will help to bring those boundaries together and actually bring us together as one. Which I think, and it also gives us a chance. You touched on it there, to be part of that bigger Yorkshire picture. Because we're almost our own worst enemy, because we sit out here and as much as we say we're not treated properly, we also, the handshake's a bit half-hearted and a bit limp, and said, well, actually, now you mention it, we'd rather stay here and just be ourselves.
Yeah.
So I think that helps to cement us as part of that bigger picture. And that comes back to that same argument about, well, actually, yes, we're part of the big stuff, so let's actually get down to the nitty-gritty. Forget the name, almost forget the geography, but let's have a look at those actually real stats that say, well, this is the spending power, this is the people who are here, this is what you can achieve. And it's getting rid of that, almost those 1980s, those 1990s myths.
Stigma.
Yeah, it's interesting because off the back of that, I think you're right, they're all myths, because someone was telling me when I first moved up here that, is it Hull or East Yorkshire has the most personalised number plates per however many people, and I was like, really? And then you drive around and all you see is personalised number plates.
My wife's family, most of them.
Yeah, no comment.
No, but you're right, and the days when the only national leagues we were top of was the unmarried mothers under 16 with kids and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think those things are and you get all the things we've discussed, but the quality of housing gets better, the quality of hospitality gets better. We've got a police force now who are, if not the first, they're certainly in the top 5 rating. We've got the schools.
Yeah.
We've got the uni. Wearing my kind of college governor hats. We've got some great. The educational base is solid, and part of it is bringing that together as a picture. So if you're a potential employee, I remember back in the days, and you remember when, KCOM had to have an office in York because that's as close as a lot of their recruits from the south would come. Well, my wife wouldn't live any further east than York. It's about as far as I'd come, and that was the point. And hopefully that's now we're changing, and we're actually standing on our own 2 feet. One of the biggest changes I always think is pure geography, and I remember 2016. Tony Hall, who was then director, I think, of the Beeb, he was on the train coming up to Hull, and he was about to make the speech about what was going to happen with it, what 2017 would mean for people and what the BBC were going to do for them. And the story goes, and I think it's quite true, he's on the train talking to the minions saying, look guys, I've got nothing. What am I going to do? I'm an hour's time, I'm going to stand in front of the great and the good, and apart from the Turner Prize, I've got nothing to offer them. So one of the little wags said, "Hang on a minute, Governor," and he pulled up the weather map, and he said, "Well," because at the time Manchester and Liverpool were both on there, and he said, "What if we picked up for Manchester? But what if we put for City of Culture, we put Hull on the weather map?" Tony said, great, I love it. That's it, it's fantastic. Right, do that. So literally they drew this thing on the train, and he's speaking to the great and good and said also, he said, what we're going to do for you, every weather bulletin going forward on the BBC in 2017 is going to be like this. And there's Hull. So even if you didn't know what it meant, you damn well bloody knew where it was.
That's what one of my biggest frustrations is when I see the weather and it's gone back to it. It's never on there. We've got everything down the northwest or the west and whatever, and it's like we get as far as East Anglia and that's where it stops. And I'm like,
but there's more to do, isn't there? So if you get the gig, Jim, you're the mayor of Hull then. So what would you do? What's the one thing that one change that you would make if you were to become the mayor of Hull at some point?
I think probably I think it's about the transport links, and I think that's where I think we just need that little bit stronger. It will help because it just seems been with us forever. The Hughes Bridge will get the Hughes Bridge will be coming off. Yeah. The A63 will get finished. I think there's a lot we can do with the trains. Some of that is hanging over us from previously. Hull Trains do a great job, but I think it's more that east to west connectivity. Yeah. I think if we can get that, because at the moment we take far too many people to Leeds and Manchester than we bring back from them. And I think if we could make that a lot stronger, because as we said earlier, we've got that great transport link. We were just talking about it, just on a slight tangent. We're talking about for Coldplay next year, 25,000 people over 2 years. Lots of that are coming to the city. Now, lots of those will come into the city by train or even by coach. And as we all know, gentlemen, you don't walk to Craven Park from Paragon Interchange. So that's going to be an interesting thing as to how we do that. We're talking about being part of that park and ride, maybe putting on a fan zone and everything else. But that is a perfect example where we can get people effectively into the middle of the city, and a lot of those will come longitudinally from Leeds and Manchester or picked up on that line. Yeah. And I think if I was the mayor, that was the thing I'd be looking to do and I'm not saying you have to electrify it because that's big bucks. Yeah. But I think just make that service a lot more reliable, make it a lot more easier to use, and I think there will be that in itself will be. I've always. My mantra for this city has always been to fish where the fish are biting. So yes, I would love people to come to York. I would love people to come from Barnsley or even as far as Sunderland. But you know what? They're not going to come. But what I want to do, and it's an awful word, is stop some of that leakage. Yeah. Because people don't understand that they can get a decent meal in Hull. There is some good shopping. Yeah. There is some good nightlife. Yeah. And as that message starts to filter through to our local people, it moves out to their friends, as you said, who actually start to come in. Yeah. And I think there is no better PR. And this is where social media is so powerful, that the PR that says, just had a great night in Hull. Iron Lilies was amazing. Yeah. Saw Paul Smith at the Connexin. So funny. What a great night. Got a beer, had a good meal, got out the car park fine. Oh, really? Can't do that in Leeds. Cost me 15 quid to park, and I was an hour getting out of the car park. So a little bit of that stuff just starts to permeate through.
On the Chris Martin piece, how did that happen? Any ideas? Did he just wake up one day and think, actually, we'll do 5 nights in London and 2 nights in Hull? It just seems crazy.
Yeah. Well, I think there was this requirement to do this Northern Cities thing.
Okay.
Which was I could understand that. Sounds very strong. I think there's two questions in that. One, you pick Hull out of those numerous northern cities, but more importantly, Craven Park.
Yeah, I know. I know.
The home of music.
What's it? I saw the Who there. Was it last summer?
Week, I saw Rod Stewart on the week before on the same bill.
Yeah, and it was great, but it's not the easiest place to get to in the world, is it?
No, and if you do go for a little tinkle in the East Stand toilets, you take that trip back in time, don't you?
You do. So
Grandad, when you used to go to Craven Park, it's the same urinal as you went to.
So he must have just seen it on the weather map and decided that.
I think there was probably. I would suggest, and I'm not privy to this. I think you've got to say it was a great bit of lobbying, one on behalf of the city, but particularly on the Craven Park hierarchy.
Yeah,
and whether that's down to Paul Sewell, David Kilburn, Neil O'Gill, but I think they, and I'm sure in time they'll tell us. But Dave Kilburn's got previous with Rod Stewart at the MKM, so I think it's I'm sure that was, and I don't know for sure, but I think that those kind of guys must take a lot of credit for that. But that's another thing, gentlemen, that it's those little things that bizarrely put us on the map. I'm sure you must have been the same, across our business. And I work for a London-based business with lots of outposts, and not only was my email or my text full of, what's this then? How's this happening? Never mind the odd, you're a friend now because you want to take But that was, and it's they're the things that bizarrely get people talking about our city.
It's amazing. I think it's brilliant. We had Bob Dylan. Did you see Bob Dylan in Connexin Stadium?
Yeah.
Not everyone's like you.
I know. Yeah, I just thought that's amazing. So well done to.
But that's a perfect venue for that.
Yeah,
4,000 people went through, and I just think it appeals. I was talking to somebody today at the gym, and they're a tribute band person.
Yeah.
So City Hall now, 1,100 people for tribute bands. They saw, I think it was a Luther Vandross tribute.
Yeah.
He said the place was packed and jumping. 1,000, 1,100 people, perfect. So you start to find that little bit, the way the truck's a bit more edgier than the new theatre.
Yeah.
And you start to find your different niche within the city.
Yeah.
And if you can build that up, and then people say, actually, I enjoyed that night out. But they need to be able to get there.
Yeah.
Park reasonably okay, or there's a taxi or a bus. But again, that comes back to the hinterland. Where are we trying to bring people from realistically?
Yeah.
Can we get people back to Hessel and to Bransholme and maybe to Beverley, and even, dare I say, across the bridge to Scunthorpe? And that's, or you can actually, I'm not saying it's cheap, but the value that people to the west of the city find by coming into the city, because a pint was a bit cheap. I'll never forget. I think it was the last time at FC were in the Challenge Cup final, getting off the train at King's Cross and going into one of the local pubs. And some wag, there was a chalkboard on the bar, and some wag had written, "Yes, we do know the price of a pint in Hull," and all the rest of it. So we offer very good value in this city.
We do.
Yeah.
All right, so future of retail then. So you talked about actually the centre of cities, Hull as an example, is probably going to be more around hospitality and restaurants and theatres. So where does retail play in that? Does that mean it carries on the coattails of it, or does retail move out of town again? What are you expecting?
I think realistically, if I'm honest, I think and certainly my business will back that up. I think the future of big brand retail, if you like, is certainly edge of town.
Right.
Far more flexible to use, costs are cheaper, lots and lots of free parking. So I think as much as there is still a role to play for urban retail, I think it will be slightly different. You think Hull now, wearing my bid hat, nearly 70% of our hereditaments of our businesses are independents, which compared to the bid started in 2006, and it was the other way around. Right. So that's now lots of that is wet driven because it's the independent pubs, but it's also the independent shops across all parts of the sector. And then you've got pop-ups, you've got the markets. They've worked really hard on Trinity. I love that. You still need to back that up with the TK Maxxes and the Tesco's and the River Islands and the Works and all the rest of it. And I think that's where places like ours kind of come in. But to be fair, nobody's building urban schemes like that anymore. The landscape's moved on. I went to a conference in the early part of the year, and somebody was sat there with a mobile phone and an iPad, and he held up the mobile phone and said, "Right, this is a small shopping centre," and they held up the iPad and said, "This is a large shopping centre." But that's also a bonus to us, because if we use that, speaking to the guys who know this stuff, but if we use that intelligence, so shoppers know exactly when we're open, we know how the parking works, they know how secure we are, we know how clean we are. Maybe they do click and collect. The stores say, "Look, I know we haven't got that in red in a 12, but try a blue one. And what's your name? Right, we'll have that with you tomorrow morning." Yeah. So I think there's lots of ways of making that technology work for the customer, as opposed to they end up going to the inbox in the rain, pressing the button, the parcel comes out, and actually it doesn't fit me at all. Yeah. So now I've got to wrap it back up again. Oh, and they're going to charge me for it and put it back in the box and kind of send it back. So people like Next do that fantastically well. Have done for years and years and years. So I think if retail adapts, it's all about, you could almost argue that for years, the high street dictated to the customer.
Hi guys, just jumping in, I want to talk about one of the services we offer, which is robotic process automation, also known as RPA. That is software that replicates human behavior. So if you've got people downloading spreadsheets, attaching them to emails, going on portals, downloading information, moving data around, all that stuff is perfect for a robot. So if that's interesting, get in touch, let's have a chat, let's see if we can help. Enough from me, back to the conversation.
That's where you had to go, whether they liked it or liked it not. Your mum and dad went into town on a Saturday because that's when they were free, and that's how they had to do the shopping. Yeah. And mum got the housekeeping, went round with the kids, right, Molly needs a pair of shoes, Jim needs a coat, right, Dad, you go to the supermarket and do that. And that was their Saturday. Whereas that's changed now because we're all time poor. So retail has to adapt to that. I think I don't necessarily buy in completely into the experiential market. I think it has to be clean. I think it has to be efficient. I think you have to get served properly. But that doesn't mean to say that while I'm here, I have to watch herds of wildebeest riding across the plain, or somebody has to mop my brow or give me a cappuccino. It's actual fact. I'm just here to be quiet quickly, and I'm going to look at that Rolex. When can I have one? I'd like to try it on, just see what it looks like, see if that face is the right size for me, and everything else. So, and that's the reason why the retail now tends to be fashion-led, is because of that same sort of thing. Actually, that's the lowest common denominator, which is the hardest to see from a picture. Yeah. Because we've all got slight bigger lumps and bumps than we thought we had. So actually, we do actually want to maybe try it on or see what it actually feels like, because we've all had that issue where we've opened the parcel and thought, hang on a second, that does look a bit like a picture I saw on the iPad yesterday. So that's where I think so. Yeah. So if you want to talk pure retail, will naturally move out of town, but that doesn't take away it can still play a big part in that city centre experience. Yeah. It helps, and I think I mentioned it earlier. I think the genuine heritage is what people like to see. That's still a big hook to hang things on, and taking the kids around the deep and making sure the Maritime Museum is interactive, and I can press that and I can learn about the headscarf revolutionaries as much as I can see that whale skeleton, and I can actually go onto the Arctic Corsair and imagine what my granddad, when he was a decky learner in the 70s, what he was actually going through, because that appeals to lots and lots of people, and that's the driver of footfall, and then you add all the rest into it.
Do you see St. Stephen's becoming more kind of hospitality led Or will it always be a kind of retail footprint within the
No,
city?
I think more and more, if you think leisure-wise, we've got rock climbing, we've got trampolining, we've got indoor golf, we've got fun station, we've got the cinema, we've got the hotel. I think that's part of the mix, but it's how you blend that together, and I think it's creating, because this idea from the 90s and the noughties that you're wandering through town after having a meal and 5 pints in the cheese on Jameson Street. I think I fancy a game of indoor golf. Probably not. Or vice versa. This idea that after the same trip, you're then going to go into River Island and buy a shirt. It ain't going to happen. So I think it's us being actually practical and clever, and finding out actually where retail plays its part and where everything else does. And it's blending that together to making sure the customer experience. So the car park needs to be good. It needs to be easy to use, and if you can, it needs to be fairly cheap. You need good toilets. It needs to be clean. You need to know where you're going. And also you need to cater, you need the diversity in our offer is massive. We care massively about our less able customers. We care massively about our visually impaired or our hearing impaired customers. That's a massive market which over the years we've kind of forgotten about. Oh yes, well they'll do what they do. Well, no, they won't, because they want to come shopping as well. They want that experience. So if we have genuine car parking spaces which are bigger and are next to the centre. Same as if you're coming in with the kids. That is, I don't know how, when my kids were little, that is just, you just don't bother.
It's not
just give it to granddad. But actually, if we can make that experience actually quite good, so there is the space to do, yes, we can come down here. There's stuff for them to do when they get there. Nobody's shouting at them, everybody's helping them. Actually, that makes it, we all just want that to be easy, don't we?
Yeah.
There's good precedent, I think, for cities like Hull. If I think of, we went to Liverpool a while back, and that's a city similar sort of heritage to Hull, I guess, in the location of, albeit on the other coast. It's pretty downtrodden in its day, and yet it's kind of revitalised itself. And I'm walking around, I think it's Liverpool One, which is their big retail outlet. At sort of 7:30 at night on a Wednesday, and it was rammed with people and busy. And I just thought, how can we make Hull like that? What have Liverpool done that we need to do?
Yeah, I think you're right. That's not what they've done there is they made the whole point of we're not going to put a roof on it, which probably is the bit that makes it special. So we'll sort out the public realm. We'll bring the shops people want. We'll mix it in the bars they want. We've got the transport links, and of course they've got a critical mass. And I'm not. We always will have for those who know Hull. It is if you think of that trip from St Stephen's down to the shorefront, it's a fair walk, ladies and gentlemen.
True.
So I think we have to be realistic and say, well, actually, people will come for different parts of the city. Yeah, and it's been quite honest, and us saying, well, actually, we're part of that picture, but it's creating a brand. And it's deciding actually what are the key bits of brand Hull. So if I'm the Doubletree Hotel and I'm pitching quite successful as they do now, I'm pitching for that conference because I want those delegates from all over the region, maybe all over the country, to come to our wonderful conference venue. So what am I saying to them about coming to the city? How easy can they get here? How cheap is the parking? Where can they go out for a meal at night? What can they go and see? What can we roll into that package? So that's part of it. And then if you visit Hull and East Yorkshire, you're saying, right, how am I going to get my heritage message out there? So those people who've come for the caravan holiday at Flamborough, or even, dare I say, down on the East Coast, back to your part of the world, they're all looking for something to do, particularly as we know in this part of the world, if the weather's not great, well, come to us for the day. Yeah. Hop over the bridge, come down from your caravan park, and this is what you can do. So it's back to the point I made earlier. It's thinking about your market, fish where the fish are biting, and say, well, actually, what about this part of the populace? And then social media does the rest. they tell their friends, and they tell their friends on the park. That was a great experience. Then the caravan park thinks, hang on a second, we need to make so that becomes part of their social media.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying everybody goes there, because of course you want to be on the beach, you maybe want to go walking, but there are those days when you want to do something different.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Who's the one brand that you want to attract to Hull, you want to bring into Hull over the next couple of years? If you could choose anybody.
Yeah, well, I think it's probably, I would say it's probably certainly on the fashion side, and I think that would certainly, we're working very hard to get Mango on the fashion side. I think we still need to do more with our food and bev offer. I think there's some brands which we're missing. Good to see. I think Five Guys are coming out to Kingswood, which will be good.
Are they? Ooh, good. Like
yeah,
Five Guys.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I think that's going to be the kiosk in the car park.
Right.
Wagamamas would be fantastic. We've talked to Wags over the years, and they should be on this podcast because they're still not convinced about the city. But I think they're ones we'd like to see. So I think that's where independents play their part. But for Gen Z, and that is the future, gentlemen, they are when it comes to F&B, they are very much brand led. And as much as Nando's will always be there, and I'm a real Pizza Express man myself, I think it's those up and coming brands. So it's the Popeyes, it's the Wags, it's those kind of people coming through. And whereas Princess Key are doing a great job with Brewdog and now Iron Lilies, and there is some, don't be wrong, there's some amazing pubs in the old town which are great. I think for Gen Z, a bit of that, a little bit has to be brand led. So I think we'll see where that goes.
What's your relationship with Princess Key? Do you see yourselves as competitors, or do you see yourselves as allies in terms of attracting people to the area?
I think we're very much allies. I think the city centre is, as I say, we're all part of that bigger brand, and as much as we need each other, because I don't think one, it's desperately important to me. And we have a great relationship with the council, but the way they market the city is important. The fact that we come back to transport, we sit alongside the interchange, so it's important that people find that easy to use, and people want to come to the city on the train or the bus. I think the nighttime economy, as much as it doesn't drive as much as my business, but people will. Same as the football. If I'm trying to think when the next home game is, but Saturday afternoon, fans. In fact, we've got lots and lots of derbies this year because of the mix of the championship. Yeah. So people arrive early. We are that first port of call to the MKM. Perhaps they might park with us, they might eat with us, they might shop with us, they might come back afterwards and have something to eat. So it's a complete interaction around the city, and it's all those bits that kind of come together, and almost subconsciously our visitors start to do that. So if we've got enough value hotels that can offer them a good night in the city, they might come on Friday and actually say, well, actually I quite like the idea of making a weekend, so I'll go down Humber Street and enjoy that, and I'm there for Saturday, especially as more and more of the championship games now are at 12:30. So the more we can push out to that, and then it's bringing in the cultural side as well.
Good stuff. All right. So the podcast is called Tomorrow's Workplace Today. So what's the future of retail? So in 10 years' time, what if you walk into Hull or any city like Hull, how will it be different from today, do you think?
I think if you go back to pure retail, you'll be led by your mobile phone or whatever mobile device you have, because you may have planned your journey ahead. While you were travelling here, you'll have been bombarded with messages to where to go, as to what to do. You'll have been told where the best offers are. Those pins will have dropped into your phone as to what you need to do. So again, going back to that generational gap, when my mother had decided on Saturday morning that she had to go to Lawson and Stockdale's in Grimsby to get my mother a coat, you'll plan that same journey again. Not that you still won't want to browse, but that'll be the way I think you will kind of plan your journey. And similarly, you will be, I think our leisure time will, similarly again, will be a lot more homogenous. The unknown one to me is how I'm 65 in a fortnight, so I'm not going to be doing full-time work for that much longer. And more people who are in my position who will be retired or semi-retired, still with, obviously I'm a pauper, but other people around me do have spending power. And it's how I think that is a massive untapped generation. Now, we grew up in an analog world, but we like to think we're actually maybe fairly IT savvy, and we're getting to grips with that. So how can we enhance the grey pound, if you like? I think it's going to be very important. And again, back to where I started, the diversity pound as well, because we need to be a much more inclusive society. And there's too many people who, perhaps because they have a hidden disability or they need a wheelchair, think they're excluded from the rest of the world, and they're not. So I think I think we will be very much IT, will be whatever the device will be phone led, because that will pay for our parking, that will probably lock our cars, and it will deal with everything on that sort of, that's paid for. I know exactly where the kids are and what they're doing, or there they are bouncing up and down on the trampoline, whatever. But I think for me, there's still those little unknowns about, we haven't really thought about yet how we're gonna deal with that. Are we happy that pretty little market town that Beverley does what it's doing on its own, or can the old town in Hull replicate that? Can we bring that into that, so people feel as though, well, actually, I can get there, I can feel safe, I can get there easily, and I can enjoy that as a day. And almost, right, okay, we're going to go in the old black boy next, fine. Same round, you press the button and you walk in and your drinks are on the bar. Yeah. Whatever.
Nice vision.
That'd be a great vision.
Like that.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Jim, thank you so much for coming on.
Really interesting.
It's great to hear about your journey with St. Stephen's, and great to hear the passion about Hull.
Pleasure, guys. Thank you. Very interesting.
Brilliant.